I have crossed this bridge into Helena, Arkansas more times than I can count. I know the long approach to it. I know the steel rising above the Mississippi River, the road narrowing into that familiar passage between one side of the river and the other. I know the way the delta opens beyond it, flat and green and endless, as if the land has been pressed beneath the palm of God himself. And I know it waits on the Arkansas side. The levee, the fields, the old buildings, the streets that taught me how a small town could feel when you were young and how enormous it could become once you understood everything it had given you. Helena is home. I come here all the time, but on day 32 of the 1,000 miles to Memphis, standing on the other side of the Mississippi River and preparing to cross that bridge on foot, home felt different. It felt heavier, more sacred, more emotionally dangerous. I wasn't expecting that. There are places we become so accustomed to seeing that we stop noticing what they mean. Familiarity flattens them. A bridge becomes a bridge, a river becomes just a river, and home becomes the place where we know which roads to take without thinking. We pass through it on our way to somewhere else. We forget that these ordinary landmarks hold the architecture of our lives. And then one day, after 32 days on the road, you stand before the same bridge you've crossed 1,000 times and realize you've never crossed it like this. I wasn't simply going home, I was arriving. And for 32 days, we have moved through the South beneath rain and heat, through cities and towns where history still lives close enough to touch. We've stood in places where ordinary people found themselves confronted by extraordinary injustice and decided they would no longer submit quietly to it. We've listened to stories that survived because someone was brave enough to tell them and because someone else cared enough to carry them forward. We've stood where the Freedom Riders bus burned just outside Anniston, Alabama. We walked through Birmingham where children once faced police dogs and fire hoses because they dared to demand the freedom the Constitution already claimed belonged to them. We've sat inside the First African Baptist Church in Tuscaloosa and listened as Mary and Irene told us about Bloody Tuesday, and not as an abstraction in a history book, but as something remembered in flesh and in bone. We've been to Tougaloo College and met with young activists still doing the work. We've stood at the home of Medgar Evers, close enough to see that little green house in Jackson where a husband and father was murdered for believing that citizenship ought to mean something. We've traveled the Delta and followed the road to the places where Emmett Till, a 14-year-old child, spent his last days. These places do something to you when you let them. They remove the comfortable distance between history and the present. They make it impossible to pretend that the past happened somewhere else, to people unlike us, in a country that no longer exists. They remind us that history is not a collection of old photographs. It is the landscape. It is a church floor. It's a scorched roadside. It is a driveway in Jackson. It is cotton twisted into the wildflowers on a Delta road. It is a river still moving past towns that have spent generations carrying what happened there. After 32 days, all of that was coming across this bridge with me. So are the miles themselves. The rain from the beginning, the suffocating heat, the hurt feet and exhausted bodies, the mornings when getting up required a private negotiation between purpose and pain. The laughter inside the vehicles, the meals shared with people who had just been strangers when we began, and the tears that came without warning, and the friendships built somewhere between one town and the next. The people doing the daily, often thankless work of protecting democracy in communities that the national political conversation never bothers to notice. There's a strange intimacy in traveling a long distance beside other people. Eventually, the performance falls away. Fatigue will strip everyone down to what is true about them. You learn who notices when someone is struggling. You learn who shares that last bottle of water. You learn who keeps walking when no camera is present. You learn that movements aren't sustained by grand speeches nearly as much as they are sustained by small mercies repeated every single day. And we have said throughout this that we move like water, together, persistent, capable of reshaping what appears immovable. And now the water beneath us is the mighty Mississippi River. I grew up beside this river. It has always been a part of the geography of my life, so large and constant that it can become almost invisible. But there is nothing ordinary about the Mississippi. It carries half a continent through the heat and the heart of the country. It has carried commerce and culture, freedom and bondage, wealth and hunger. It has divided states while binding together the history of a people. The river does not absolve us of anything. It simply keeps moving, bearing witness without testimony. And here I am preparing to walk above it toward Helena. The bridge itself has become kind of a measurement. Behind me are 32 days, hundreds of miles, and more history than any one heart can comfortably hold. And ahead of me is a place that made me. Perhaps that is why the emotion has come so suddenly. I was measuring the distance between the person who left and the person coming home. The bridge hasn't changed. The river hasn't changed. Helena hasn't changed simply because I spent a month walking through the history of the South. But I have changed. Home is often where change becomes most visible. We don't always recognize what a journey has done to us while we are still moving through it. Transformation rarely announces itself. It gathers quietly. The story settles into you. A face stays in your mind. A road changes the meaning of another road. And then you see the familiar outline of home and suddenly understand that you are carrying more than you left with. Helena taught me some of the first truths I ever knew, although I did not yet have the language to name them. It taught me that beauty and suffering can grow from the same soil. It taught me that poverty does not mean an absence of dignity, and that wealth does not prove the presence of virtue. It taught me that people can love a place fiercely while understanding exactly how it has failed them. It's taught me that history is never safely the past in the Delta. It lives in the land, in the courthouses, and in the schools, and in the family names, and the neighborhoods, and in the things that people lower their voices to discuss. This place gave me the voice that I have spent much of my life learning how to use. It gave me the mud and the river and the fields and the sky, and it gave me the cadence of Southern speech and the long silences beneath it. It gave me an understanding of community before I understood the politics, and it taught me that a neighbor is not merely someone who lives nearby. Neighbor is a verb. It is something we choose to do for one another. Loving Helena has never required me to pretend. It is without wounds. Real love is not a refusal to see. Real love looks clearly at what is broken and stays long enough to help repair it. The easiest thing in the world is to romanticize home from a distance or condemn it without tenderness. The harder obligation is to know it honestly, to hold its beauty and its failures in the same hands and insist that it can become more faithful to its own people. That is what this walk has been about. We have walked because democracy cannot survive as an idea alone. It must be practiced in towns and neighborhoods and in municipal elections and school board meetings and voter registration drives and conversations held on front porches. It must belong to the people whose names will never appear on the news. It must reach the person who has been told so many times that their vote does not matter that they begin to believe it. Those who benefit from our silence have worked very hard to teach us helplessness. They want us to believe power lives somewhere else, that it's possessed by someone richer, louder, better connected. But power has always been most frightened of ordinary people who discover one another. A vote is not the whole of democracy, but it is one of the instruments through which we declare that we are still here and that the future cannot be decided entirely without us. And to bring that message home meant more to me than I understood before I reached this bridge. I have spoken about Helena, Arkansas, in cities across this country and the world, and I have carried the Delta into rooms far from the Delta. It is present in my politics, in my writing, in my anger, in my hope, and in the particular way I understand America. But there is a difference between speaking about home and walking there. There is a difference between returning because it is familiar and returning with intention. And as we crossed, the Mississippi River moved beneath us as it always has. Its current did not pause for our little procession. Rivers do not stop to acknowledge human milestones. Maybe that is part of their mercy. They remind us that we are small, but they also remind us that the movement is made by persistence. Water does not need permission to keep going. This march is nearing its end now. Memphis waits ahead. The Lorraine Motel waits there with all the terrible weight of what was taken from us and all the unfinished work that remains. And soon we will arrive at the place where Dr. King spent his final hours after coming to stand beside the sanitation workers, demanding to be treated as men. And this road has always been leading there. But first it led me here, across the Mississippi River, across the bridge I have known all of my life, home to Helena. I thought I understood what that crossing would mean. I imagined it would be joyful and familiar, perhaps a little nostalgic. I did not understand that I would feel the full weight of 32 days gathering inside me. I did not understand that home would look like both an embrace and a responsibility, and I did not understand that I would step onto that bridge carrying every person we'd met, every story entrusted to us, every mile that hurt, every mile that healed something. Maybe we never truly come home empty-handed. We bring back whatever the roads taught us. This road taught me that the distance between 1955, 1964, and 2026 is much shorter than we would like to admit. It has taught me that progress is real, but never self-sustaining. It taught me that memory without action becomes ceremony, and ceremony alone will never protect democracy. It taught me that hope is not a mood. Hope is a weapon, but only when placed in willing hands. Most of all, it taught me that I am not separate from the place that made me. Whatever good I hope to accomplish began somewhere in this dirt. Whatever voice I possess carries the sound of the river beneath it. And on day 32, with the end of the march approaching, I have crossed the Mississippi River into Helena, Arkansas. I have crossed this bridge countless times before, but this time I understand that I am not simply returning to the place where I came from. I'm carrying home the reasons I left, the reasons I've walked, and the reasons I must continue long after this walk ends. But for a little while, after all these miles, the road led home. And home is just on the other side of this river.